Welcome to Fulfilling This Belly Sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them.
God Morgan, and happy Tuesday to you. I hope this week is going as well or better than ever expected. I hope that you are gaining all the energy and all the perspectives that are forwarding you and moving you towards your destiny, whatever that may be. Remember that everyone's journey is completely unique. So as long as you're moving in your direction. Before we get started today, I want to give a huge shout out to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed us on the many different platforms. I encourage you, if you haven't had the chance yet, please like, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, gain the notifications each and every morning. You'll get notified that we're on the air and that you are more than welcome to join us. In addition, I want to give a huge shout out to newrealitytv.com. New Reality is a streaming channel dedicated to different perspectives and different understandings that can help us by maybe providing us with that little bit of intellect or knowledge that we need to catapult ourselves into a better mental space. Remember, spirituality and a better mental health are tied. They're connected at its most basic roots. So a great opportunity. For those of you who kind of want to read more about me, my teachings, my shows, and all of the things about me, by all means, check out my website at norsewhispers.com. There you can also navigate to the page and we can start a dialogue and we can actually work together to help you to establish a forward trajectory that you're happy with and that brings you joy and peace and harmony. And you can find that at norsewhispers.com/coaching. By all means, feel free to look me up. And for those of you who might have a few extra coins jingling around in the purse, or want to put them to good use, by all means, stop and hit up our tip jar, drop those bad boys in there, and we will utilize them to put together this technology delivery, to put together all the travel that we go around and we visit with people around the world to help them to establish a better mental space. For those of you who want to actually provide your comments or questions here live, we have Facebook chat open as well as TikTok chat. So throw those questions out there and we can hopefully get them answered or at least get them addressed here on the show. Today we're talking about Tyr. Now Tyr represents, for those of you not familiar with him, he was represented, or recognized I should say, originally by the pre-Norse, by the Germanic tribes that would migrate north to become what we know to be the Danes and certainly the Norse of legend and lore. Tyr was actually recognized originally by the Germanic tribes. These Germanic tribes recognized him as the or as the God of law and justice. Equality. Now, for those of you who may read the runes or may practice the art of divination using the runes, you know that there's the rune Tiwaz. And Tiwaz, of course, represents the god Tyr. And it recognizes a lot of different traits, but primarily amongst them is the even-handedness and the honorable and that which is equal. Now, Tyr became more recognized in the sagas when he was kind of the god of courage, as he was willing to put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir. That Fenrir would be chained. Fenrir, for those of you not familiar with Norse legend, Fenrir, of course, being the son of Loki, but also a giant wolf, and he was very problematic to the realms. And so the gods felt that he should be chained until Ragnarok, where he would be let free and, of course, do the damage that he will do. But back to Tyr. Tyr represents a couple of different key things. And as we look at justice as this idea, as this concept, justice really represents an equality, a balance, right? Law says if you do a wrong thing against a societal group, then you will pay a certain price, whatever that may be, whether that be, as the Norse did, you would become outlawed. Outlaws was very bad in the days of the Norse, which could include up to becoming a slave of those you wronged. And you would, depending on the crime, of course, you would spend time in servitude to that which whom you wronged. This is a very strong concept to understand when we talk about ourselves, because in the same manner, as we allow different influences to come into our mind and to alter our thought process and our emotional states, we become technically a slave to them. We become a slave to particularly larger emotional stacks like that of depression or that of anxiety. We become a slave to it, and that it begins to dictate how we interpret the reality at which we are experiencing. And so the goal here today, as we celebrate and embrace Tyr and his courage, is our ability to look intrinsically, to look past the ego, the bravado, the false, the pretense that we're this or we're that, and discover who we really are at our most deepest core, right? What are our virtues? What are our values? What are those things that form the decisions that we make in life? It's a wonderful thing to chip away at that thing, and I'm always brought back to the analogy or the visualization that my ancestors have given me, and that is of the well of the self. And we've spoken about this before, but as we look at the well, kind of this deep well that's half filled with water, right? Like any other drinking well. And at the very bottom, we talk about our values, our virtues, displayed in a mosaic of beautifully colored and decorative rocks that our whole world, our whole experience of this reality passes through. And then those rocks then alter our energy or our perspective of the world based on what we are, what we stand for, what are those cornerstones at which makes us us. As we've said in the past, those values are originally they're placed by authoritative figures such as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings, all of these people, teachers, all of these people are going to put some level of rocks into your well. And then you'll kind of sort it out as life goes on. You kind of sort out what you want and what you don't, ultimately arriving at some level of a mosaic painted at the bottom of this well. These are the values then that everything in your life, everything, every experience you have will pass through those values for us to create then the biochemistry in our body that our brain then recognizes as a feeling, as an emotional state. And believe it or not, even if you deny the recognition of this emotional state, it's still going to occur. It's still going to build up this biochemistry. It's still going to pass to the brain, where it's part of that experience. It's part of that moment that we remember. Above these rocks is a well half filled with water. Now, for those of you who've ever used a water well or been kind of relying on it to get water, there's a couple of things that occur with that water, right? And as we go through life, people, other entities, other influences around us are going to try to put rocks in our well. They're going to try to instill societal inclusion, right? And we become part of a social group. That social order, some of it just it is. So when these and they get in there, they have a tendency to water. Okay. Because you got to remember, itself open to the ground. We just dug a big hole in the ground, so the in a well say dirt and hits it, the silt that comes up to. Now this is a problem that we see quite when is so murky, we can't get our energy through it, so we sidetrack. We just dip out and go out to the side. And that going out to the side, of course, causes its own breed of problems, so we're not there yet. This water, this murky water, I kind of associate with the ego, with bravado, with living inauthentically. And that water is going to prevent us from seeing our own intrinsic values, what we really value. So our decisions now are based off not our values, but just getting things done, moving on. And that's where we wind up having struggles in the future. And what I mean by that is when we do that, when instead of allowing that energy to go all the way through the water to the values below, and we come out the side, we wind up with a delta between where we should have been and where we are. And that delta then, the biochemistry is not reflected appropriately. So biochemistry then, or I should say the brain, will imagine the delta. So we can actually cause ourselves more concern, more anxiety when we go out the side instead of allowing it to come all the way to the values. All right. And so this delta becomes a stressor that then limits the amount of emotional, imaginative, any type of psychological trauma that we may experience in our reality. So it can be a very concerning thing. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from break, I want to talk about how we can look at, deep dive into intrinsically, so that we can now manage the rocks and manage the clarity of the water. All right? So we'll be right back, and then we'll talk about clarity of the water.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me.
It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Hello again. Thank you for watching that quick message, and hopefully you will check out New Reality TV. Wonderful combination. When we left, we were talking about the clarity of the water. How do we clarify that water? How do we make sure that our energy goes all the way through our volume? Well, here on Midgard, or Earth, we call it time. Time. We use time to allow our energy to sink all the way down to our values. Now, as I mentioned in a previous segment, we were talking about that water becoming murky when we have ego or bravado, or we're living inauthentically. When we're trying to meet some societal norm, some acceptable societal behavior or societal standard that really is not us, right? So we're having to be something that we're not, just to be included in a particular group. And we do this, quite honestly, almost unconsciously. We seek that inclusion. So how do we clear it up? Well, we've mentioned it a bazillion times, and we'll probably mention it another bazillion times as time goes on, and that's meditation. Meditation allows us to reflect intrinsically, to look inside us. Now, meditation does not have to be this big production, right? It can honestly be a moment of intrinsic reflection, simply pausing, trying to minimize, if not eliminate, as much sensory input as we can, pushing that aside, and just looking intrinsically. And then it really comes down to asking ourselves a series of questions. What do we have value in? What's important to us? Not what's important over there, not what's important to the group, not what's important to maybe even our spouses or our partners. What's important to us? What do we feel? Now, I am always one for making notes of things, because I like referring back to them. Do I still feel that way? Has that changed? Is it changed in a particular situation? And if so, why? As we begin to dig deep into ourselves, pushing aside the ego, this is why meditation and these types of exercises are a very personal, very individual type of exercise. You're going to want to look at you at the deepest level that you can. And you're going to do that by asking yourself questions. But when we ask ourselves questions, and this is the other part of TIR, is we're going to be honorable in the answers. Remember, you're not answering to anyone else. It's just you. You've got to know. For us to have a good chance of getting that better mental health, we've got to understand why we're doing these things to ourselves. Why are our values kind of crooked? I'm always reminded when we're talking about these values that may kind of derail our desired perspective or our desired trajectory. I'm always reminded of generational emotional status. So one of those would be like generational hate, as an example. Generational love, this is the same thing. Why, when our parents or our authority figures, particularly as we are young, and they put these values in there, why do they feel that way? And is there value in my life? Is there a reason why I dislike a particular stereotype, as an example, of person or place or thing? Is there a reason? And if there isn't, and you go, I just don't subscribe to that, then don't subscribe. Take that rock out of your well, throw it over the fence, and move on with your life. Move on with your life by expressing and embracing the other side of that. So if as an example, my father, when we were growing up, my father was racist. That's who he was. Don't know why, because he was really never in a position to be that way, but he was. And he was very sexist as well. Do I have either of those values? Absolutely not. I think they're ridiculous. They're foolish. We have to look at each value ourselves deep inside and say, why would I do that? What is the value to me? What is the value to humanity for carrying on this particular value? And so as we begin to clean up our well, pushing away the ego, pushing away the bravado, pushing away inauthenticity, and we begin to deal with our unique values. As we clean them up, you will find that life, our perspective of our existence, becomes a little easier. It becomes more reliable, more dependable. When we know how we're going to think, we know how we're going to feel. More importantly, as we begin to form groups of harmony in society, they know what to expect. They know where you stand when you begin to live authentically. No more fake, no more pretense, no more false anything. But this is really where, and this is why I love Tears Day. I really love celebrating Tears Day. And a little personal reveal, as I began my shamanic trances and visions, one of the individuals throughout my ancestral past who would come and help educate me in the ways of this was named after the god Tyr, and his name was Tyrion. He is my great-grandfather. I want to say, according to other ancestors, I think he's around my 95th great-grandfather, something like that. Really far back in history. But anyway, so the god Tyr has a personal value to me. But I love him for another reason as well, in that he provides us with an example of courage to find justice in here, in our hearts, in ourselves. Find the justice to who you are by being honorable, right? To embracing even the bad stuff, because we're going to have to go through is, we've had experiences in our past that may have produced some negative things, that may have some negative ramifications that we have still in memory, when still in our hearts as a value. We're going to have to look at those and discover why we think that way. And again, coming back to, does it have value today? I'm always reminded of some of the movies you watch, and you say, oh, that person has emotional baggage that they're bringing with them. Well, everyone has emotional baggage. They have emotional memories. The question is how are they managed? It's not as much that you have the baggage, is that how is the bag packed, right? Is the bag exploding all over the place? Is it wrapped in the plastic bag because the airlines dropped it? Whatever the case, right? When we look at our emotional states and our emotional memories, what do those look like? And do they have value to my life, to my existence today? And excuse me, and noting the difference when we look at these values as to what values I have today versus what values do I want to have. What is my desired state? What do I want to be when I grow up, so to speak, emotionally? As we look at these pieces, this should let us find those rocks, those energies within our well that are established that don't serve to get us where we want to be, where we want our values to be. If we say, hey, I really want to be a harmonious person who can associate with hundreds of people, hundreds of friends, and close friends, and just have a great time. What values do I have today that are derailing me from getting to that point? That will bring on more friends and more compatriots and good friends. We have to always kind of identify what are our values and what do I want my values to be, right? Where do I want to be? And these are questions we're going to ask ourselves intrinsically in quiet contemplation. Just try to shut down as much as much sensory input as we can. Try to shut that down so that we can look intrinsically and begin to ask ourselves questions. Now, again, this comes to journaling a little bit, and I try to journal quite a bit when it comes to my own values, because I want to know what they are. That way I know who's trying to change me, who's trying to influence me in a direction, and do I want to go that direction? If I don't, then we draw the line and we terminate the relationship, or at least the acceptance of that value, or acceptance of that rock for my well. If I want to go that way, and yes, that's the direction that I really want to be someday. I really want to be in that. I want to have that value in the future. Then, yes, I will accept your rock and I'll put it in my well, with the understanding that I can take it back out too. I'm not forced to keep all these values for my whole existence. They may not serve a purpose. They may not have value to me in a couple of years. So I can manage what comes in and out of my well. And I do that by asking myself questions. And then in my case, I've just written down the answers. What do I feel about this? What do I feel about this other thing? And then when they change, then I have much more clear delineation, and I can say, oh, look, something's trying to change this value. So, meditation or intrinsic reflection, quiet contemplation, whatever you want to call it, asking ourselves those questions and being honorable and courageous enough to ask the questions and to get the answers. As we begin to get these questions and answers, we can begin to clear away the water, see the values at the bottom of our well, and begin to live our lives authentically, who we are. And this is the greatest relief and the greatest gift you can give yourself to your mental space. Is when we live authentically, it's so much easier to handle psychological trauma, psychological imbalances, all of the things that are going to occur in our lives. We can now deal with them much more effectively and efficiently because we're living authentically. Living authentically is the best gift you can give yourself. All right? So I hope that you will use today, Tears Day, and every day for that matter, to sit down and take a few minutes. It doesn't take long. You do 5 minutes a day, and you can at least start getting some answers. Start figuring out who you are authentically and beginning to live your life authentically. When you do that, you will find your mental space is restored and you can heal that which has been damaged throughout the years you've been here on Midgard. So it's a great opportunity. All right. Before we go today, I want to remind you, this Saturday, of course, is solstice. We will have a drumming circle here in South Central Alaska. We'll be at Beluga Point, where we'll welcome the sun. It'll be roughly about 4 a.m. I think sunrise that day is at 4:20, give or take. And so we'll be welcoming the sun on the longest day with our drum circle. So I hope you will join us for that. We'll have as much as we can here online, as well as we'll have the live event. So you can always show up, bring your drum or your dancing shoes. You're welcome to bring either and or both. And we will see you at Beluga Point, where we'll have a wonderful drum circle. I'm hoping that many will join us, and we will welcome the sun on the solstice. So look forward to that. That's this Saturday, the 21st, 4 a.m. Alaska time, and hopefully we'll have a great time doing that. So put that in your calendars, and we will see you again tomorrow when we'll celebrate the wisdom of Wotan. And in the meantime, today and every day, take a few minutes to ask yourself those questions to help you find your authentic self. All right, my friends. Have a wonderful Tears Day, and we will see you again tomorrow, where we will talk about the wisdom of Wotan.
Watching for Felina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Wolf Hefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.